What does thermokiet alarm 4 mean? This alarm is identified by the manufacturer as a yellow color, which indicates a warning or an abnormal condition but not necessarily a serious fault. Code 4 is related to the temperature of the air supplied to the refrigerated warehouse or a specific area thereof. It is important to investigate the cause of this alarm and take action to resolve the problem before it becomes a serious failure. The essential tool to carry out diagnostic tasks, which we are going to explain below, is the multimeter. By the way, if you are interested in buying a cheap, good quality multimeter that can carry out the checks that we are going to show in minutes, we have left a link in the description that directs you to a store where you can buy the equipment you really need. Take into account the following recommendations. You must first verify the veracity of the alarm. To do this, measure the supply air temperature with your multimeter. Check the reading on the thermometer function and compare it with the reading provided by the Thermo equipment controller. If there is a big difference between the two readings, you should focus on the sensor, which is precisely responsible for reporting the supplied air temperature to the controller. The main causes of temperature sensor problems that cause the Thermo code are A. Sensor circuit open. If the Thermo equipment uses a PT1000 type sensor, the control module detects the open circuit problem when the resistance measurement of the sensor circuit is greater than 1300 ohms. B. Short circuit in the circuit or sensor. Return air sensor short circuit is detected by the controller when the sensor resistance is less than 600 ohms. C. Out of calibration sensor. In other words, the resistance value is not correct when a certain temperature occurs. Perform the following checks. 1. Review the data from the controller to see if the sensor is sending consistent and accurate signals. 2. Check for damaged sensor wires. 3. Check connections from sensor to controller. 4. Make sure the sensor is not exposed to extreme temperatures or environmental conditions that may affect its performance. 5. If the sensor is suspected to be failing, another sensor can be tried to see if the problem persists. 6. Use a multimeter to check the continuity of the connection on the PT-1000 sensor, and make sure there is no break in the circuit. Since in some models the sensor is a PT-1000, a two-terminal sensor, take these recommendations into account. 1. Disconnect the sensor end with a multimeter in place. Measure the electrical resistance between the two sensor wires. 2. The sensor cannot be examined without disconnecting it. 3. When the sensor is a PT-1000, it has a positive temperature coefficient. This means that the electrical resistance of the sensor increases with temperature. 4. Remember that the sensor is calibrated to have a resistance of 1.0 ohms at 0 degrees Celsius. The following questions may now arise. How to measure the continuity of the temperature sensor circuit that causes the Thermo key alarm? 1. You need to use a multimeter and disconnect the temperature sensor. 2. Make sure the multimeter is set to measure continuity. 3. Connect the multimeter in continuity mode, usually with a test area with an arrow pointing towards a beep symbol. 4. Use the test leads of the multimeter to touch one of the two terminals where the PT-1000 sensor is connected, and with the other end of the multimeter, touch the terminal of the same cable, but now at its other end. That is, the connection that enters the controller. The idea is to check if the cable has no breaks, and there may be continuity in the current. 5. If the multimeter indicates continuity, it will either beep or read 0 ohms, which means the circuit is complete and there are no breaks in the circuit. 6. If the multimeter does not indicate continuity, an ALL or infinity sign infinity reading will appear, which means there is a break in the circuit and the cause should be sought. 7. It is important to ensure that the sensor is disconnected from the circuit and has no power during the continuity measurement, to avoid damaging the sensor or the meter. To measure the resistance of a PT-1000 sensor with a multimeter, follow these steps. 1. Make sure the multimeter is set to measure resistance. 2. Use the multimeter test leads to touch the terminals of the PT-1000 sensor. 3. Note the reading displayed on the multimeter. 4. Compare the reading obtained with the values specified in the user manual for the PT-1000 sensor. 5. If the reading obtained is significantly different from the specified values, the sensor may be damaged and should be replaced. 6. Keep in mind that the resistance of the PT-1000 sensor will vary depending on the temperature. It is important to make sure that the sensor is in a stable environment and at the recommended temperature to obtain an accurate measurement. 7. The normal resistance values with the PT-1000 sensor can be seen in the following table. To measure if the voltage supplied to the PT-1000 sensor is correct with a multimeter, follow these steps. 1. Make sure the multimeter is set to measure voltage. 2. Use the multimeter test leads to measure the voltage across the connection to the PT-1000 sensor terminals. If the voltage displayed by the multimeter is negative, you must interchange the test leads from the measuring device that you just placed on the two connection terminals. 3. Note the reading displayed on the multimeter. 4. Compare the reading obtained with the values specified in the user manual for the PT-1000 sensor. 5. If the reading obtained is significantly different from the specified values, the sensor may not be receiving the correct power, and the electrical circuitry of the equipment should be investigated. 6. If the voltage is very low or not present, there may be a problem in the electrical circuitry of the equipment and should be investigated. At this time we must say that the thermokian alarm 4 can be caused by problems with the sensor signal, but it can also be caused by real problems in the transfer of heat from the air to the refrigerant. Physically, it is recommended to verify problems with obstruction of the air passage through the internal console of the equipment, as well as verify the cleanliness of the evaporator or air filters. Another cause of the problem may actually be in the operation of the refrigeration cycle of the thermokian equipment, for example refrigerant leaks, or problems with the airflow of the evaporator fan. For this reason, another type of alarm must be ruled out in the controller, since if there is a fault in the refrigeration cycle, another fault code must be presented, indicative of the location of the problem. Remember that in the comments part of this video, there is access to an article with more relevant information. Thanks for joining us. See you at the next thermokian alarm.